Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. And Io has now just stolen the show, so I can't even surprise you with her. So afternoon, everyone. It's really good to see you all here. So welcome to this live webinar that is specifically arranged for you, our level 3, level 5 leadership, management and professional coaching apprentices here at Raise the Bar. Just before I introduce Io, I'd just like to remind you that we've got our very own alumni group on LinkedIn called Raising the Leadership and Management Bar. So this is where you'll find news and updates, details of upcoming webinars and recordings of our previous webinars. And you can also use that space to build your networks with your past and present learners. So if you're on LinkedIn, please come and join that group. Well, I think Haley just popped the link into the chat, so grab that a bit later on and come and say hello. So for the next hour or so, we've got Io Sokale will be exploring the subject of mapping your career. So Io is a civil engineer, a BBC presenter and a leading keynote speaker on the environment, sustainability, STEM and neurodiversity. Io possesses an array of talents and expertise, working at the cutting edge of scientific, environmental and media landscape. And interestingly, the name Io directly translates to mean joy. And having spent a little bit of time with her, I can't think of a more fitting description. So she most definitely brings joy to those around her. And some of the many things that bring joy to Io are dancing, singing, acting, presenting, working with children, supporting charities and fundraising, modeling, fitness and biohacking, fashion, traveling and food. And she's also interested in psychology, philosophy and sustainability. And if that's not enough, Io is a former councillor and deputy mayor and a former beauty queen. So I've got a feeling there's going to be plenty for you to take away from this webinar. So get your notepads out and get your questions ready. Without further ado, please welcome Io Sokale.
Thank you so much. Now, that is an introduction. That is an introduction. So I'm looking forward to raising the bar today and coming up with something that's eccentric, out there, energetic, but more than anything, that gives you something to take home, a clear message and a clear action for how you can map the career that you really want. Now, this isn't about me. We're going to be doing an engagement today. So I'm going to be giving you bits of tasks to do as we go along. So like Steve said, you need to have your notebook out and your pen at the ready. But you've heard the introduction. I've clearly done a lot in my attempt to live a purpose-filled life. I really care about making a difference and really harnessing my potential. And that's really what I want to share with you all today. You know, I'll start with my personal story and how I got to where I am today. And I'll focus on how I took learning from one part of my life to benefit an area completely different. And that kind of idea of holisticness and that approach to development. I'll talk about following your organic interests. As you'll see, I have a lot of categorical interests, but that's kind of the seed that really, you know, grows and germinates into these big achievements, is that I'm following the thing that I'm naturally, organically interested in. So I'll urge you guys to spend some time reflecting, both during the call and out there, on what are your organic interests and how do you bring everything together and approach your career and map the career you want that's organic and considers your professional, your personal, but also your interests outside of all of the things and your personal constraints as well. I'll share exercises. I'll urge you to take notes and, you know, do some individual action, because mapping our careers is very much a personal task and it calls on us all to do the work. So I want us to do the work in this session. So let me tell you a bit more about myself. So by profession, I'm actually a chartered civil engineer, a career I chose at the grand old age of 9. That's a way to mapping your career for sure. So at the time I was living in Nigeria, a developing country, and I'd witnessed an engineering project that delivered core infrastructure, benefit the community there. And that for me sold me on the power of engineering and the ability to transform communities. And I decided it would be my first tool to shape and change the world. Now, I'm going to talk to you today and I'm going to ask you to think about the things that you feel really motivated to solve. Often we talk about big problems in society and things that stress us out, but I want to flip that idea on its head and think about the things that are the stresses and the pain points in your life and in your business as actually the seed of the solution and what you may become. So first task, I want you to write 3 things currently that are challenges for you, both at work, outside of work, and in all aspects of your life. I'm giving you 30 seconds, counting down now. Come on, guys. Are you writing? Are you thinking? 3 challenges that you're facing. You have 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And your time's up. So I want you to make a note of those 3 things and bear them in mind as we go through the conversation today. Because starting in my very first career, being a civil engineer, it came from a seed of a challenge and seeing the opportunity to solve a challenge. And that's why I became a chartered civil engineer. And it's been a hell of a run so far. From completing my master's in 2016 and getting involved in my first project, I've been able to really deliver outcomes. From managing my first project, the Amazon flood alleviation scheme that protected a grand hold 5 homes in flooding, to my next project as site supervisor for the construction of the Tollway flood alleviation scheme that protected 275 homes in flooding. See, the numbers are going up. To working on biodiversity projects and designing fish passes and being part of large-scale schemes like the Team 2100, which is a 10-year program that was to replace and refurnish the tidal flood defences in London and the Thames estuary. Defences that include the famous Thames Barrier that you may have seen, or 350 kilometres of floodgates, embankments, smaller barriers, and pumping stations and floodgates. A system that protects 1.25 million people and £200 billion worth of property. Now that's a way of scaling up effort. And we'll talk about effort and return on investment of our actions. So make a note on that. In your notebook, ROI, return on investment, because we'll talk about that in a bit. But it's really important to use the skills and knowledge I gain to try and transform and to become who I want to be next. And that's going to be a key theme here, that we're becoming something next. And we're constantly on this evolution and iteration and developing. And it's not something that's finite or has an end goal, but it's something that we're continuously doing. So firstly, using all those experiences, I managed to become a chartered engineer in just 3 years. And on the back of that, I was also selected as my professional body, the ICE, the Institution of Civil Engineers, future leader, which meant I got to work on game-changing publications like the ICE's In Plain Sight, which is a report that looked at reducing the risk of infrastructure failure post the horrible Grenfell tragedy. Now, I know we're not all UK based, but the Grenfell tragedy was a fire that happened in a block of flats in London in 2017 that resulted in the tragic death of 72 people. So I went on that project and was able to come up with recommendations to improve my industry in a wider way. I'll touch on this later when it comes back to our actions that we must all take so that we can, be part of the line of defense. So make a note on that. We will be talking about the line of defense, ? So I went on to have lots of different roles, taking on roles of project managing, building information, modeling, so really the zeitgeist of change, and now leading teams. Alongside my day job, I have sought opportunities to make a difference to my communities and engage and simultaneously grow. This has seen me being elected as an elected councillor and a vice chair of my planning application committee for the town at the time, and obviously coolest, the youngest ever deputy mayor of Reading. I've also become a BBC presenter, as you can see, you're in my dressing room today, and a coach, and I founded charity events, campaigned for my community, been a beauty queen, and an animated superhero advocating for sustainability. And I'm currently writing my first book. So when it comes to development, I think it's all about one thing. Any guesses? I've already said it. I'll allow you to interject now. I give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Anyone have an answer for me? What do I think the foundation of self-development? Tristan, I see you on my screen, so I'm just going to pick on you.
I knew that was going to happen, being the only one with a camera on.
Yes.
I'm going to say self-evaluation.
Oh, that is a good one, and we're going to talk about that. But the first thing I'm going to say, it's about taking a holistic approach. You see, all the things I've been up to seem rather categorical. They don't seem like they intersect. And I'll explain why this is really important. So thank you, Tristan. And I'll come back to self-evaluation later. Thank you for engaging. You can all put your cameras on if you like. It just means I'll pick on you. It'll be great. So when I mean holistic approach, I mean understanding that you can learn from various experiences and then cross-pollinate the lessons from one area to another to kind of get that accelerated development. So if you take a lesson as an engineer working in flood risk, and then you're a counsellor sitting on the planning applications committee, you can bring the skills from your technical background to ask better questions of officers and developers. So making sure that your town is actually getting the best quality development. That is hijacking learning from one area to develop in another area. It's piggybacking on growth in one area to thrive in another area that may almost seem unrelated. And I have another example of this for you. So when at university, I was very eager to make a difference, and I founded an annual charity event. And I then was competing in beauty pageants to raise the profile of my events so that they could be more successful and I could raise more funds for charity. Now, this skills that I worked on in doing this was volunteering. I became a fundraising manager for a charity. And in kind of delivering and founding my first annual charity event, I got my first taste of project management, managing stakeholders, and platform development. And these were the skills that would then actually help me in honing my speech making and campaigning in my community, which became essential to winning political campaigns. So seemingly unrelated experiences that actually can be so cataclysmic and defining of the success you'll have later. And that's what I want us to start thinking about. So next task for you, on a bit of your paper, I want you to write areas of interest for you currently. What are areas that you're super interested in right now? I'm giving you 30 seconds. I'm giving you 10 seconds now. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off. So we're going to come back to those areas of interest later when we talk about hacking our potential and bringing it all together. Because Tristan has set us on track for my very next idea. So I've talked about the need to focus on development, to thrive and to accelerate growth. But how do you really go about it? One, I think you have to have a belief system that allows you to understand that you're a masterpiece. So it comes from a sense of you like yourself, you love yourself, but also you understand simultaneously that you're a work in progress. So you can be both a masterpiece and a work in progress, and doing the job daily in your consistent habits and actions to then grow to reveal your inner greatness, because there are parts of us that just aren't discovered. I often muse about this. When we see little children and they haven't learned to walk yet or to talk yet, they have a bundle of potential. But if at the end of our days, we'd never harnessed that potential, we never made it something, that would be quite a tragedy. And that is the job of every human, to harness all the potential that we have to become what we could become, our highest zenith potential. You know, when you actually realize that potential into something tangible. But we have to understand where we're coming from, and that is the starting point. And this is what Tristan said. You know, you have to identify, have a self-awareness of where you are and where you're starting. And this is where like tools like the skills gap analysis can be very useful. I don't know if you've ever undertaken one, but I think it's a very useful tool to use. See, the exercise helps you identify where you want to go. So you write down, okay, my name is this, and I want to be in this role in 10 years' time. Then, in knowing that, you identify the skills required for the goal you have. So let's say you want to be president of the United States. You will write down whatever skills you think that's required. You might want to do some research on that, find out from other people, maybe get some, I don't know if they have a presidential role description. You write down what that role description for that title is, and then you start to evaluate where you are presently. So what on that list of role descriptions for the goal you have, where have you already met the bar, and where do you have somewhere else to go? That difference is your gap. These are the things that you need to address to achieve your desired outcome, role, and role. Like whatever job you want, whatever goal that is, that gap is a thing that you need to address. So this is where you have to start taking work. But to really achieve any growth, you have to be intentional. You have to be intentional about it. And that's why the skills gap analysis is so important. It really drives that intentionality. First of all, you know where you want to go. You know where you are, and you know exactly what that gap is. And then you can start speaking to your peers, doing some research to find out how you can go about gaining that experience, gaining that growth, gaining that development opportunity. And that's where a plan comes into place. You create a plan to get the skills, the knowledge, and the experience you require. Now, my top tips in my career in doing this are 3 things. Number 1, you have to maximize where you are. See, often we have a very idealized idea about where we're going to get growth. For example, we say, I will have the opportunity to grow when I already get to that position. But actually, how in your current role, in your current place in life, could you start taking the initiative to gain the experience that would actually help you to get to where you want to be? That's what I mean when I say maximize where you are, because growth can happen everywhere. We don't always assess accurately where we are and the opportunities that we have right now. So here's another task for you to do. You really have to think about where you are, what you have to hand, what interests you have, what passions you have, the things that excite you, the things that challenge you, the things that even trigger you, because these are the opportunities for the growth that you're going to undertake. And then you need to drive for that growth. You need to advocate for that. And it can be something as simple as booking some time in your line manager's diary and say, you know what, let's assess where I'm at. What's my current performance? You know, where are the challenges to in my role and the part of the business I work in, and how can I meet that challenge and then as a result grow? That is number 1, maximizing where you are. Now, number 2 is looking for the opportunities for that accelerated development. I like to call accelerated development gold dust, the things that make you stand out, the kind of cataclysmic experiences that just change the game. It doesn't always have to be in your business. It could be developing your interests outside of work. It could be volunteering. It could be anything. Now, that's why it's so important to identify those 3 things you're interested in and then look at that area of interest and how you can kind of find gold dust opportunities there. Because let's say you're interested in your local brownie club. How can you use that to grow as a leader? You know, if you're interested in a plastic-free group, how can you use that to grow and become a better people manager, a better time manager, whatever it is that you want and is in your gap? How can you address that by following your interests and using that to gain gold dust experience? But of course, with all these things, it's about being consistent. Right now, you're going to get very excited. It's awesome. We're chatting about it. It seems exciting. But the truth and the reality of things, it's about the consistent action. So you found your opportunity for gold dust. You've addressed the challenges where you are and you're trying to maximize that. But to really make that become something that's going to make a difference in your life, in the short, the medium, and the long term, you need to make it a consistent habit. So for me, I like to practice my languages by putting a recurring calendar appointment that says, this is time to practice my Mandarin or I'll lose it. I'm currently doing a diploma in sign language. So every Thursday I have a 3-hour slot that tells me, oh, we practice sign language now. Because to be excellent at anything, you also have to be consistent in your aptitude and your attitude to approaching that. So when you are looking for these opportunities and you are addressing the opportunities that are facing you right now, the key thing that's going to help this to really result in tangible awesomeness in your career and mapping the career of your dreams is how you do it and how consistent you are in it when it's not super exciting and you just haven't had a fabulous talk by me. But the final point on this is reflection. You see, I think it's really crucial that we take time to reflect. And also, this really helps us consolidate the knowledge we're gaining. Often we have very fast lives, we're often reacting to the changes that are occurring in our business and in our personal lives, but we're not often reflecting and being conscious about the lessons that we're learning and the things that we can use to grow and to really consolidate to becoming the person we want to be, to mapping the career of our dreams, which often means calling ourselves to the highest ever version of ourselves we've ever seen. That's where reflection comes through. See, when I was doing my chartership to become a chartered engineer, one of the key things I did is I did quarterly reports. So I wrote a report every quarter talking about what I'd done that quarter. What were the best practices on the building site I was at? You know, what were the methodologies that worked? What didn't work? You know, what were the advantages of this and the disadvantages? Were there alternative methods I didn't know about? So some of that will be doing research. Could we have reduced the carbon footprint of a construction project? What were the greater benefits I could have delivered if I thought about it more consciously? By reflecting on what I'd done, and like in this quarterly report, I could really drive home change. I really nailed the lessons. And that resulted in real change. That is where I think the final bit is actually more important than anything, because even if you did your day job every day, you would have moments where you learned something. But if you didn't reflect on it, it would just be lost lessons. And that seems like to me quite a tragedy. There are 3 things I think we could all do to start hacking our potential and to really map that career of our dream, maximizing where we are, looking for that opportunity for gold dust, and then reflecting on the lessons we're learning. But ultimately, doing all of these things will cause you to do a scary thing, to do something that seems almost out of your comfort zone. It's in your stretch zone. It's going to call you to do something that you don't necessarily feel comfortable doing. But that's where change happens. That's where you gain a successful experience. And from that successful experience, that's where you gain competence. That's where you gain confidence in your newfound competence, and you repeat the cycle. And that is that continuous process of growth. But it's about consistency too. You have to keep this ongoing process to achieve your desired outcomes and to have the career that you want. What you do today will lead to the career you have in a week. What you do in a week will lead to the career you have in a month. What you do in the months will lead to the career you have in a year and decades. It's all about doing the work. However, all of this sounds like a lot of work and awfully difficult, actually. And that's why it's really important to have something that you can come back to, a touchstone, something that helps you get recentered about why you're doing what you're doing. And that's why having a why and a reason will help you stay focused and driven. Because understanding your why and your values, it's critical, it's crucial even, to living a life where you are on fire, you are reaching your zenith potential, you're living in a way that's having a positive impact, you're performing positive acts of service to humanity, because you know your why and your values. I know my values. At a 9-year-old, when I was 9 years old, I knew that I wanted to live a world that was better because I was in it. So I wanted the world to be tangibly better because I existed. And therefore, I needed to find tools that would help me to make a positive contribution. Now, you all need to go on that journey yourselves and find out your why. What is your why? Is it to leave a positive contribution? Is it to be a great parent? Is it to be a great friend? Whatever your why is, that's going to really be the thing that drives you to reach the growth and the change that's going to have you have the career that you want and you ultimately desire. But how do we find out why? Because I'm saying this in a big way. Find your why. Oh, what is that? How do you do it? Well, first, when we know our why, it makes everything easier. So that's why it's so critical, because meaning is so important, because a key part of life is challenges. The challenges will just be, they're part of it. Every day you'll find a challenge, and in it is a silver lining to grow. But you can only find that silver lining when you know your why. Your why reframes your experience. It literally changes your perspective. You see challenges as opportunities. You see things as a way of growing. It helps you overcome laziness. It gives you purpose, and you literally become more growth-minded just by knowing your why. It gives you a clarity, and therefore you can live with intention. One of my great favorites, Nietzsche, says, if you know the why, you can live anyhow. So I baited you, you need the why. But how do you find the why? Here comes the biggest bit of homework I want you to do, and something that I want you to allocate an hour of your time towards. And I don't think this is asking much, considering we're talking about our careers and our lives here. So I want you to get your pen and paper and really pay attention and jot these things down. This is the most powerful exercise I've ever done, and I want you to spend some real time doing it. So I'm going to list 12 things, and I want you to write them down. Listen closely. So number 1, we have life vision. Life vision, number 1. Number 2, we have quality of life. Number 2 is quality of life. Number 3 is career. Number 3 is career. Number 4 is financial. It's financial, number 4. Number 5 is social. Number 5 is social. Number 6 is parenting. Number 6 is parenting. Number 7 is health and fitness. Number 7 is health and fitness. Number 8 is intellectual life. Number 8 is intellectual life. Number 9 is emotional life. Number 9 is emotional life. Number 10 is character. Number 10 is character. Number 11 is spiritual life. Number 11 is spiritual life. And finally, number 12 is relationships. Number 12 is relationships. Now, these may seem so broad, but that is the point, because we need to have a why that features all the aspects of our existence as a human being, so that when we're making a decision for our career, we consider how it might impact other parts of our lives. So we understand the cost of a decision and the implications of everything that we want to do. So now we have those 12 things listed down. I want you to ask yourself the following questions about those 4 and those 12 areas of your life. So these are the 4 questions you're going to ask yourself about each area. So number 1 is, what is my current belief in this area of my life? And number 2, what does the best version of my life look like in that area? Number 3, why would that be better? And why would I want it? So why would that be better? And why would I want it? And the final question to ask yourself with these 12 areas of your life is, what would I need to do to achieve it? Now, by answering these questions, you start to understand what you want in the various spheres of your life. And you literally put your whole life in its holistic nature right in front of you on paper. That is the map. That is your roadmap. That is your compass. That is your blueprint. That tells you where you want to go and why you want it and what you need to do. That will help you define what success looks like for you personally. That will help you make career decisions. That will help you motivate yourself to do what's required. It will help you know what to say yes to, what to say no to, and it will be your source of accountability. Because whenever you are faced with a decision or a challenge or an opportunity, you'll be able to say, saying yes to this facilitate my goals. It will be your framework for decision making. It will be the art of essentialism on paper. You'll say no to the things that are not essential and yes to the things that are essential, making the wisest possible investment of your time and energy so that you can operate at your highest order of contribution. So you are going to want to spend time on this task. It is going to be game changing. Now, there are lots of other things you can do to support this task. You can do a vision board. I love a vision board. You can do it on Canva, put it on your phone, see it everywhere. You can do 5 strengths, which is a task that I ask people to do. Ask 5 people they trust to tell them 5 great things about them. That starts to tell you things that you're good at. Because when we speak further, you're going to understand that it's important to work from your strengths as well as grow your weaknesses. You can do your Myers-Briggs and understand more about yourself, because we're driving to map the career that suits you. So that's got to start with a huge amount of self-knowledge and self-awareness. Now, you'll see I have Maslow's hierarchy on my slides, and you wonder why she got this when she's spoken nothing about it. Well, it's because I want to talk about well-being as well. You see, we do live in a very beautiful culture that often encourages hustle culture. And I can't talk about driving for your goals without caveating that and acknowledging that you have to remember that you're already enough and you're awesome anyway. And you're simply on a journey to uncover more awesomeness by getting to know yourself and trying out lots of things and then taking the opportunities to grow. Therefore, you have to prioritize your well-being in this journey. So it can be not only holistic, but sustainable. So you get the right amount of sleep, you eat well, you drink enough water, you create a safe environment, you get the basics right. Because in getting the basics right, we can prevent burnout, and therefore we can achieve longevity in our plans. We're mapping a career that's going to go over spans of decades. Careers are not short things. They go over the course of our whole career, our whole lives, and we may change and flux throughout it. So it's really important that the heart of this is a self-love, a focus on your well-being, and ensuring that everything is achieved in a sustainable manner. And now I've talked a lot about self-development, but I think there really are 2 phases to our careers and therefore 2 approaches. I love the idea of essentialism as kind of championed by a great author, Greg McNown, if any of you have read him. He talks about the disciplined pursuit of less. However, not everyone can adopt this approach because we're facing 2 different parts of a career. So phase 1, when you're at the start of your career, as many of you are on this call, you are saying yes to everything. And you need to do this because what you're doing is increasing your surface area for success. This means you try everything, you give everything a decent amount of time, maybe 3 to 4 months for each new thing, and understand what it is, what the opportunity entails, and if it's a right fit for you. And then if it's not, we quit and we try something new. And that's an important idea, to move on when we found that if something isn't the right thing for us. But we have to try it for a decent amount of time. And at the start of our career, we have to say yes to a lot of things, because we don't know what we like yet. We don't know what is going to be the thing that's going to be amazing and change our lives. Therefore, it's about gaining that surface area and doing everything, staying rather broad. But long term, we start to flounder and we need to start focusing our attention. And that brings us to the second phase of our career, to saying no. This is the time in your career where you feel like you've maybe made it, if we can say that. You feel like you're in a situation where people will say, yeah, they've made it, and therefore you're faced with a lot of high quality opportunities, lots of amazing things, but all of them have, maybe potential conflict of time. You have to spend a lot of time prepping for new things. Maybe you're gonna have to travel, and saying yes to one thing is saying no to something else. Therefore, you might start having challenges about work-life balance, and at the heart of it, maintaining your well-being or ability to even do these commitments very well. And this is the part of your career where you start to practice that extreme essentialism, where you only pursue the things that are unquestionably a hell yes. I mean, like, yes, a hell yes. Enthusiastic, 100% full-bodied yes. And if it isn't, it's a no. So there are two phases of our career now. So you've got to ask yourself this question as well today. Where am I at? Am I saying yes to everything and increasing my surface area for success? Or am I starting saying no to things so that I can actually ensure that I meet my existing commitments in a way that will allow me to maintain my competence and success, but also make sure I'm doing things that are full-bodied yes? Now, this is an approach that I've adopted. And you know what? I think it's resulted in some pretty cool career highlights, Buckingham Palace being one of them. However, there are challenges in this, and it's important to build personal resilience and coping mechanisms into your career. Careers are not linear pathways. If you could tell from my presentation, even the first 5 minutes, is that there is no linear path in careers. They're squiggly, they're ups and downs, they're random things that don't make any sense till, as Steve Jobs said, when you can connect the dots going backwards. But when you're living it and you're looking forwards, you have no idea how it's going to work out. So we can talk about mapping our career, but there is an element of resilience that I want to drive home, that you have to be flexible to change and flux. We live in a society that's constantly changing and flux. I mean, did anyone see the news this morning? And things are always happening. And therefore, we have to be quite robust internally to be able to be resilient to the changes, but also to be flexible to adopt new approaches so that we can have a career that is successful, but also look after ourselves. So to do this, I think it's really important to undertake regular reflection, as I've spoken about, to learn from the challenges and your general experiences, and then to consciously grow. But I'm going to share some of my lessons so far from my career. So one of my most important lessons, and probably the hardest lesson to learn, was to learn to enjoy the journey. And I've heard this like a bazillion times growing up, enjoy the journey is important. Well, I didn't listen to a single person when they said it till I learned the lesson myself. But I hopefully, by me stressing it today, someone will learn the lesson without going through the heartache. You see, often we can be very destination-focused beings. We are very outcome-focused, and that can be useful. But of course, when we're making decisions about what we want to do in our career, we have to make decisions that are based on the process. Do we like the process? Let's say you want to be an engineer, but you actually hate what that entails on a day-to-day basis. Well, you'd be an awfully bad engineer because you'd be miserable. And you'd be an awfully bad colleague because you'd be miserable. So it's really important when we're making career decisions that we think about the process. What does it entail? Am I going to enjoy the process? Because our lives are made up of those processes. I've had a slide that shows my highlights. There's that Buckingham Palace moment, but that's one day. All the days that led up to that day is the process. If I hated the process, that would be the majority of my life. And we can't live our lives in that way. It's just fundamentally unhealthy. So that's my number one lesson. And I will stress this till the cows go home, because someone told me this and I didn't listen. So I hope one of you or two of you or three of you will listen and take this lesson. It's really important that we aren't goal focused at the detriment of everything else. Now, number 2, sounds kind of morbid, but it's remembering that everything you want is going to cost you something. So that's why it's really important to have your roadmap and your framework, and to look at your life holistically into those 12 areas. Let's say you get an amazing opportunity to spend 7 months traveling in the Arctic, and there is no signal, but that career opportunity is going to change your life. But in those 7 months, you don't speak to any of your family members, you miss all your friends' weddings, everything you want is going to cost you something. So you've got to be able to address that and look at your roadmap. When you spend hours and hours looking at the exercise I set you to map your career, you will know, okay, this is going to cost me in 11 other areas of my life. Is that worth it to me? When you do that, not only is that more intentional, you feel more empowered. You know what the cost is, and you can embark on that experience with your eyes open. So therefore, you know exactly what you're doing. And that's going to help you to be able to cope with when things are bad, because you've made an empowered choice. It's been intentional. You've acknowledged the cost. You understand and assessed it, and you know that this is what you want. And therefore, when people challenge it and they ask you, why are you doing that? You know exactly why you're doing it. And you are grounded in your own personal knowledge of yourself and your own desires. Your roadmap is going to be the tool to this. So I stress again, spend lots and lots of time on that piece of homework. Now, I kind of alluded to this already, but number 3 is make use of your strengths. In the self-development and self-improvement phase and our career phase, we talk a lot about growing our weaknesses, developing and growth, but we don't often talk about growing our strengths. What are the things that you are really good at? Ask your loved ones, people you really trust, 5 of them, 5 things that you're really good at, and start to see what the patterns are there. And does that ring true to you? And if those things are really true and they are your strengths, are you using them in your daily life? Because you need to use your strengths. Sometimes we have a belief that things have to be extremely hard, right? Because we're always working from a point of weakness. But if we work from a point of strength, we can do things that are incredible, truly incredible. And then when we put effort into that, we can achieve mountaintops that are going to blow your mind, because you're not coming from a dungeon, digging your way up to a certain point and then trying to reach the mountaintops. You're already here, or you're already halfway the mountain, and now you're trying to reach greater heights. So use your strengths. We can't just succeed by copying other people. We have to do the things that work for us and use the things that are unique to us. Know your USP and use them in your career. That's how you have a career that is truly unique to yours, like a beauty queen and a deputy mayor and a BBC presenter and an engineer, because I'm using my strengths. Use your strengths. So do the task. I stress this because you are going to enjoy the journey a lot more when you work from a point of strength. We talked about whys, and this is really important. But what I want to just say on a final point before we move on is using your why as a point of internal validation. You see, success is often measured by the outside. You look like you've made it. But the best success is when you feel like you've made it, when things feel good to you, when you're happy, when you enjoy what you do. That, I think, is the biggest milestone for personal progress. So try and focus on an internal validation. Am I enjoying the process? Do I have a success ritual? Do I even celebrate my milestones? Because now you have your roadmap and you've done the homework. And you know exactly what you want and you are working towards it. You are going to hit milestones. Let's say with sign language, I've done every Thursday as scheduled a 3-hour lesson. Now, no one else is going to celebrate the process of it, doing my lessons. They might celebrate the diploma and maybe posting on social media, but the process, I've got to celebrate. I've got to do my happy success dance and keep myself motivated. So number 4 is being internally validated and celebrating your progress milestones. They're things that other people won't recognize, but you know. So make sure to do that. And finally, look after yourselves in all this and use your voice, because we all matter in this world and we have a part to play. When you live at your optimum and you map the career of your dreams and you use your strengths and you grow and you realize your potential, you make the world a better place. And in all of us making the world a better place, we are a line of defense. The world is facing challenges, be it climate change, existential crises. But if we're all doing our part, we are playing a defensive part in making the world better. I'll explain this further. So I said at the start of my presentation, I worked on the Grenfell Tower review, and that was hard. But when we were looking at that, we we came up with this idea. It's called the Swiss cheese model. It's a risk management model that explains how every part of a system can play a role to identify and highlight systematic issues and prevent like tragedies occurring, right? Now, instead of just calling it the 12 line of defense, we call it the Swiss cheese model because it's funny. But actually, this systems approach in risk management can be the same approach in an organization or in a community or in a family, where everyone is doing their part. So if it's on a construction project, maybe we have one layer being the risk assessment, so the planned work is done safely. The second layer is maybe your hard hat and your PPE. The third layer is someone observing and stopping if something's gone wrong. Every part of the system is doing its part. And when it's showing up in the way that works best, when it's doing its career potential, when it's working at its zenith potential, the whole system is better. So when you do this chart, when you do this job and you do this task and you do the homework and you map your career and you know exactly what you want to do and you do the work to achieve it, you are making the world a better place. When you realize your potential, we all collectively as a world get better because every one of us matters. And when we do our part, we can make a difference. Just like the 12 line of defense in the Grenfell Tower example. So I really want to urge you all today, do the work and map your career and make the world a better place by your contribution. Over to you, Steve.
Wow. Well, what did I say? Hope you had your notepads ready, because there was plenty to take away there. There was loads of stuff. I've got all the notes I've made. I've made so many notes. I've got my 3 challenges written down. I've got my areas of interest. I've got the 12 things I need to work on. So any questions from anybody in the room? Anybody got anything they want to share? What are your thoughts about Io's talk there? Any questions you want to fire out? You've got what, 10 or 15 minutes, so make the most of this time to grab all of that knowledge from Io to help us to move forward.
I just want to credit her for her enthusiasm there and the animation. It was fantastic. Makes great viewing. There's so much passion there, isn't there?
Thank you so much. That's using my strength. I know the things I like and I do the things I like. So therefore I feel good doing it and you get to enjoy.
I think it's an interesting viewpoint to start with your strengths rather than your weaknesses, because I think we sort of always looked at, when we looked at development plans, is to find out where we still need developing, and we always start off from the weaker points, don't we, rather than the strengths. So I don't know. I think people might be a little bit uncomfortable with asking 5 people what their strengths are. It's like, I know within my family unit, they'll be like, you what? It's tricky, isn't it? But it's a good starting point.
I think it's a mindset change. And I do want to kind of urge for a mindset change, because it's the mindset that leads everything, right? When you focus on your weakness, it's actually a really poor place to start from. And one thing I'm writing, it's in the chapter of my book, we all have equal values. We weren't created equally. So everyone has a different starting point, but they do have things that are uniquely strength to them. But if we can utilize that more, then we will really make the world a better place, rather than coming from a point of weakness where there's some things, let's say someone who's got dyscalculia is trying to do something specifically that they just aren't very good at, and you're measuring them on only that. You're not harnessing the thing that maybe they can do like amazingly. For example, the actor in Harry Potter, he can't tie shoelaces to dry. He just can't do it. He said it himself in an interview. But he can bring Harry Potter to life and change all our childhood memories. So, it's about utilizing your strengths and really coming from that position. And I think it changes the game. And I know it's challenging for our mindsets, but over time, if we came from that perspective, like it would just be such a positive experience when we came about the idea of growing and developing,
Yeah, really exciting. And yeah, starting from that strength position, like you say, Nikki, maybe it's worth talking to people you really trust, and then start to build that confidence from that as well. And I'm sorry I don't want to jump in now and steal your thunder, but I've got a question here. So what are your top line tips to finding your why?
Well, do the exercise. The exercise does break things down into 12 areas of your life. So the reason why I love this exercise, and I'll talk about it a bit more, and then I'll come back to answering more personally, is if you do actually figure out what you have a belief about your area of your life, because we have beliefs and we don't realize it. We're almost religious in the way we perceive our reality. And we always have to challenge these limiting beliefs. You might believe that in your career that only certain type of people can succeed, or you have to be smarter or think differently to succeed. And therefore that in itself limits you, right? And therefore that even stops you from even realizing what your passions could be. So even understanding what your beliefs around in all the areas of your life, you can unpick what are learned behaviors and fixed mindsets. And then only then can you really allow yourself to then dream of more. Because often we can only allow ourselves to dream of more of what we could become and find our why because we're so scared. So finding my why, once I'd done that task, was then allowing myself to follow my desires. What do I organically like to do? Like if I wasn't getting paid, if there was no status, if there was no hierarchy, what would I do? Why would I want to do that? And I kept asking myself why. So I wrote on a piece of paper all the things I like to do, and then asked myself why. And once I've answered it, I'd ask myself why again, and why, and why. And then I get down to the heart of it. And the heart of it is the need that I'm trying to have met. We as creatures and humans, and I'm really studying this for my book to write a very good chapter on this, have innate needs. And everything we do is to meet those needs, and needs for a community. Even a fantastic podcast I was listening to the other day was talking about this, you know, how everything we do and the fact that we go and rise up social hierarchies is so that we feel safe. So things like Maslow's hierarchy and the desire for safety can be a massive motivator. But if you know what your need is, you can aim at meeting that need directly, and that need is your why. But because it's a need now, and you know it's a need, and you've identified the heart of it, feel how passionate I feel when I say I need this. Say it to yourself when you found it, I need this. When you need something, that will get you to get it. It's such a pull. That becomes the why. So for me as a 9-year-old, I wanted to make the world a better place, right? I needed it because I grew up in a third world country where I saw real inequality and injustice. And I thought, wow, I can make it better because I need to see it better because personally it's upsetting me. So that need becomes strong, and that becomes your why, and that then motivates you, and that keeps you going, and that becomes almost your life purpose, your vision, and everything else comes from that. And when you start making those moves, there's a snowball effect, because once you make a move in one way to be without limits, once you've done the first task, you've really taken that away, you found your desires, you've gone all the way down to the why of them, and now you know the need that you're trying to meet, and you're meeting it directly. You start taking steps, and each step starts consolidating and snowballing, and then your life actually changes rather quickly once you've actually done this task. So this task is probably the most powerful homework, because I think if you really do it properly and you take the actions, fundamentally your life can't be the same after it. So do it with caution, because you might find out so much about yourself that you can't go back to your old belief system, and the world becomes radically different because you know your why and you're living authentically aligned to it.
I'm not very often lost for words, but your energy and your enthusiasm and your passion just completely shines through. And I'm just thinking, obviously, from that why when you were 9 years old, you know, to make that world a better place. So I'm not sure how old you are now, but obviously, is that why exactly the same now? Has it grown and grown and grown? Has it expanded to different whys, or is it still that fundamental thing that you started as a 9-year-old?
So my why is actually fundamentally the same, but the way I harness it is different. Because when I was 9, I said it was engineering. I was going to be, in fact, I think I remember writing in my 9-year-old diary, because I keep diaries and I have them all. I said, I'm going to make the world better because I existed. And the first tool will be engineering. So in fact, in my mindset, it was about tools. So the first tool will be engineering, and then the second tool would be politics. And then now it's working with kids and, you know, inspiring their young minds to want to do great things. So at the end of the day, your why might be met in different ways, because there will be so many tools that can have impact. Like so many different people on this call, probably, if they look at it, make the world better because they exist, but in fundamentally different ways. So it's about finding the way that correlates with your strengths and your natural interests. But the why is still the same, but the way I then do it and the tools are different as my strengths change and as my interests change.
Interesting. Any questions from anybody else? Because I could ask loads of questions, but I don't want to steal the show. You've got an opportunity here to ask anything. And I'm just going to ask something whilst if anything comes in the chat or hands come up. But I know when we spoke before, Io, you talked about not wanting to be babies forever. Can you just
Yes.
expand a little bit on that, if you don't mind? Just
Yeah,
so
no, I touched on it a little bit in the presentation, right? You know, when you're a baby, you haven't learned to walk, you haven't learned to talk yet, and it's cool. Everyone's looking at you and gushing at you. How cute, how adorable. But if you never learned to do anything and you were at the end of your days, no one will be gushing at you. There almost becomes a sadness about it. And there's a sadness about unrealized potential. And every single one of us on this call, every single one of us on the planet is a flesh sack of a human with untapped potential. Like literally, you don't even know what you could achieve. Like, I don't even know what I could achieve. I might shock myself with the next thing I could do. But if I didn't realize anything with it, that would be the sadness. That is the greatest loss. It's like a baby that never learns to speak or to walk or to do anything if it was capable to. You see what I mean? So it's our job to do what we could be capable for and realize what our personal zenith potential. And your zenith is the maximum that you can achieve, right? But everyone's maximum is different. So it's about the knowing of who you are, the finding of who you are, and then realizing that potential, taking all of that untapped potential and making it something tangible. Instead of just raw power and energy into something physical. As engineers, they take potential of an idea and they build a bridge, or they build the Thames Barrier. That's the potential. But potential has to be realized for it to be celebrated.
It's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Io. Oh, okay. We've got a quick question come in. So who is your inspiration when things get tough? And we also have a hand up from Maya as well. So we've got a few minutes, so if we can get two in, that'd be great.
Cool, that'd be great. So my inspiration is myself, and not in the way you think. My inspiration is the vision of myself that could be and the vision of myself that has been. So I look back to my 9-year-old self, and I think it's quite great that I have a journal and how she thought and how she felt. And I have a desire to honor that person. And that inspires me and motivates me. And then I'm inspired by my future self, because I'm ever changing with each book I read, which experience I take on. I become something new. And then that I become unrecognizable to myself. And that excites me, because if I keep on this journey with the habits and the consistency, what could I be? That inspires me, that excitement to unravel and find who I will be. And that makes it very personal to me and very different from looking outside of myself. So I like that, because when things get tough, I go back into myself. And that I think is very helpful. Maya, you have a question?
Yeah, love that. Love that, Aya. Thank you. We have a hand up from Maya. Maya, if you want to, I've got two hands up now. So
yeah, oh, that's great. Oh, hang on, I'm having trouble with Zoom, so hopefully you can see me. But that was really helpful, Aya, and so passionate. It's lovely to see, and so nice to hear that you are so unapologetically, which I think is right to say that you are your own inspiration. I think we need to be so much more like that and not feel nervous, and to look at our strengths and focus on our strengths. And one of the things I really liked, I'm just looking at my other screen where I've captured notes, is I love when you said, I'm going to make a difference because I existed. And I think, you know, it's really topical. I've just come off a bunch of calls for work, and, you know, we ask this question, why do we do what we do? And ultimately, the reason we get out of bed, I think it would be fair to say, is to make a purpose, you know, to have a purpose and to make a difference, you know. And I think that goes back to what you said about making that difference just because you existed and what you did. I think a reflection on that, I guess, is that point you talk about saying no and being able to say no, because I think if we really want to make a difference, we put this huge amount of pressure. We can be our own worst critics, can't we, to make that change and to say yes to everything. So I guess it's not really a question back to you. It's just a reflection of how do we, well, I guess there's a question with that how, but how do we ensure that we do make that difference without being to the detriment of our own well-being and our own health, you know, and that we continually grow and don't almost combust in the process because we're putting too much on ourselves. Thank you.
No, that's great reflection, by the way. That was great. I think comes down to some of the things I said as well. You know, we have to remember that we're works in progress, but we're also a masterpiece. Once you're like, growth comes from actually self-love, self-acceptance is radically different from growth that comes from self-criticism, from what are my weaknesses, what am I not good enough at. That lack of enoughness is that is a seed of disease in the humankind, and I think you see that. People are in a lot of pain without that, without realizing that they're so great, and they don't realize they're awesome. And everyone is awesome and great if they actually took time to really look at it. So that's why I like to go from that perspective. And I think that then makes the motivation more about the positive impact, and not I'm not worthy without works. So if I don't do this, I am not worthwhile. I'm not earning value by being awesome. I'm earning value because I exist anyway, and that has value, and everyone has value regardless of what they contribute or not. But then I can do this works to then harness my potential, and that is exciting. So I think it's not really because I think people can't say no. I think so people have a worthiness wound, and that is actually often that mindset is motivating them in a negative way. So I think it always comes down to mindset and pain. So once we think we're worthy and we're enough, we come from that perspective, we know we can say no, because it's not sustainable long term. There's nothing healthy or good or going to make the world a better place if you keel over tomorrow because you didn't look after yourself. But if you don't know that you have value, and you can't get through the day without feeling worthy and the external validation of others, then of course you say yes to everything. So once we flip the switch and we make ourselves understand that we're already worthy, everything changes.
Perfect, Ira, thank you. We've got one more hand up, so time for one more question. We've got a couple of minutes.
Tristan,
I'll make this quick.
This
is a little bit more of a personal query, but you strike me as a sort of a Duracell bunny type of person, you know, where you just go on and on where everybody else might fall over and stop. Are you able to sit down and binge watch a whole series of TV, or do you not unwind like that? Do you have another method for unwinding, or can you just turn off and just sit down and do nothing?
I like different things, and I think I really like to honor the things I like in different. So I like coloring, I like dancing. You'll see me doing West Coast swing or any partner dance. It helps me get out of my mind and into my body. And for me, as a very cerebral person, I try and do everything that makes me back in my body. So I weight train. I love going for walks. Anything that's physical that gets me out of my head and into my body is my own way of decompressing.
You must be burning about 500 calories an hour just doing one of these webinars.
I'm very energetic, but that's also one of my strengths that I really learned to harness over time. When I went on this journey of self-development, I was able to really lean into, but in the past, I was hiding it. I was trying to pretend I was something I wasn't, because I thought, oh, grown-ups who are very successful are stoic and sensible. I was like, well, I'm not stoic and sensible in my demeanor, so I can't be useful. And now I'm like, well, we're worthy, we're awesome, we're different, our strengths are awesome, what's our USP and how do we use it? So that's really been also a journey of just like self-acceptance. I think I'm awesome. I think you're awesome. Let's be awesome together, that kind of thing.
Right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tristan, and thanks for contributing at the start of my presentation.
You're welcome.
Well, that was absolutely perfect, Io, and I think, like you say, be you. We're only ourselves, aren't we? We are the only us. So let's share with the world. And you just said, you're awesome. We're all awesome. So I've really enjoyed that webinar. We've come to the end. I feel like I've been sitting here for 5 minutes. It's gone so quick. So much energy and so much inspiration. So thank you so much, Io. So hopefully everyone's got loads there to reflect on. Use those notes, do those challenges, do that homework. And for everybody else on the call, just remember this is a series of webinars that we're doing. Go over to that LinkedIn page that we talked around earlier, and you can watch the recording of all of these webinars. So, bang on time. Thank you so much, Io. Thank you, everybody, for coming along. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
See you in another webinar soon.